Good morning. Welcome to Hope, Faith, and Joy Daily Devotion with me, Pastor Amanda. It is Thursday morning, and we are taking a look at Genesis chapter 25. And so the life of Abraham and Isaac are moving along. We're going to take some time to look at kind of what's happening in the family. A little bit more drama always makes an interesting story. And this chapter begins with letting us be aware that Abraham takes on another wife and has more children with her. And so we see in a sense that there's this legacy that's being continued on. But what we also discover is that in order to maintain God's promises to Abraham through Sarah and Isaac, that Abraham goes ahead and gives gifts and things to his sons, but sends them away so that they won't be in competition with Isaac. So, you kind of wonder about what kind of family dynamics that's creating. But what we find out is that in this chapter, about verse 7, is that Abraham has grown old and he has now died. And it's, kind of interesting once again, is what we find is that Abraham is, even though he has a new wife, he's actually buried with Sarah, his first wife. And so that's kind of one of those moments where we recognize that later in life you need that companionship, and relationships are formed, but there's still this sense of commitment to the first and the original. And so I think that's kind of important and sweet to recognize that happens in here. So then we find out that because of Abraham's mistrust, he had Ishmael. And so we see that the genealogy of Ishmael is in here, and just how he and his children are living kind of into the promise also. And we find out that Ishmael, by the end of this, we kind of say this is the end of his life. And so we kind of see all these kind of endings and then new beginnings. Because after this, so we have Abraham and Ishmael now have died. So we move into what's going on with Rebekah and Isaac. And so we find that there's this traditional kind of thing that keeps happening. Is Rebekah, it says, is barren. So she's unable to have children. And so Isaac prays to God, and then she is able to have a child. And so, but what happens for her is it finds out that it says that she's having a terrible pregnancy because her womb is just, there's a struggle going on inside. And the Lord tells her that she is going to have twins. And it says that these twins will have two nations, and that these two children are going to struggle throughout their lives together. And so we also find out, too, that it will be a non-traditional relationship, because it says that the older one will serve the younger one. So in that time, it was important for the eldest to inherit. The eldest was to be the one who would be the head of household should anything happen. But in God's blessing, or in the Lord's talking to her, he says it'll be the opposite. The younger one will be. So we find that the children are born, and one of all things, the first child, it says, is very hairy, and his name is Esau. And then we have the second child being born, clutching his brother's heel, like kind of just holding on, and this is Jacob. So we already see this wrestling already inside the womb, coming out of the womb, and it just kind of sets us up for the drama that is going to come. And so we find out that there's also family dynamics happening here. So Esau is considered to be a skilled hunter. He's a man that works outdoors in the fields, and his father loves him. Isaac loves Esau. But then we find out that Jacob is more of a quiet kind of guy. He prefers the indoors. He enjoys the chores of the house and all of that. And we find that Rebecca loves Jacob. And so we're setting up this kind of, parental child dynamic that's being played out and will continue to play out. So what we discover at one point in time now, we're getting into adulthood with the boys. And we find that Jacob is quite the chef in the kitchen making his food. And Esau comes in after having worked outside in the field, and he says he is famished. I love that. I'm famished. And so he's like, give me some of whatever you're cooking. I mean, he's kind of rude about it. He's like, whatever that stuff is, I'll eat some of that. And Jacob just kind of, he doesn't appreciate this. And he goes, sell me your birthright, and then I'll feed you. And we find that Esau does not take his position very seriously. And he's like, well, I'm dying of hunger right now, so my birthright, what good does that do me? I don't get that till Dad's dead. So, yeah, whatever, you can have it. I'm hungry. And to make sure that it's not just some joke, Jacob says, well, you've got to swear to me first that I get your birthright. And Esau is just like, here, I swear, give me some food. Just that's all he can think about. And so then we find out that right there in verse 34, then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank and rose and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. And so we see that this family has their own issues, and it'll play out now. But we see that these brothers have very different intentions. Their parents have a very different love for each of them, and I think this is normal family right here. The reality of it is. And so I think it's important for us to just recognize that within our families there's differences. And I would hope that what we learn through the whole story is that maybe we won't try to take advantage of our siblings, but learn to appreciate them for what they do have to offer, knowing that we can't all be the same. That's what I would hope for us to get from this. But we're going to find that Jacob's quite the trickster and gets himself into trouble along the way. And maybe in a sense we can discover of how not to be in some of the story. It's not about how you should be, but about how you not to be. Because later in life we'll see how this struggle plays out. And so anyways, that is chapter 25 for today. Tomorrow we are going to continue on with the story of Jacob and Esau and Isaac and what's going on in their lives. And so thanks for joining me for today's devotion. Hope, faith, and joy, and we'll see you tomorrow.